Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of the Federalist Papers. And this essay is by Alexander Hamilton. We've seen quite a lot from him in this text. We're on number 33, the same subject continued. And it's going to deal with taxes again. Now, what I like about reading this text is you begin to see what the Founding Fathers wanted, at least one of them, and how that's different from today of the modern Republican Party, and just how far things went astray in 200-something years, okay? And his English style is classic Americana language, and if you want to improve your English, reading these essays really help you because you learn a new rhetoric style, a new sentence syntax, if you will. Let's begin. Bismillah. The residue of the argument against the provisions of the Constitution in respect to taxation is engrafted upon the following clauses. The last clause of the 8th section of the first article authorizes the national legislature to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the powers by that Constitution vested in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. Alright, so authorizes the national legislature to make all laws that are necessary and proper. And what's necessary and proper to carry out the powers that are invested by them via the Constitution. And the second clause of the 6th article declares that the Constitution of the laws of the United States, made in pursuance thereof, and the treaties made by their authority, shall be the supreme law of the land. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. These two clauses have been the source of much virulent invective and petulant declamation. Right there. Virulent invective, petulant declamation. See, if they taught English on this level in schools, America would be far better off. But instead, we have kids being like, no cap, that's a skill issue, and other nonsense words. They have been held up to the people in all the exaggerated colors of misrepresentation, and the pernicious engines, think about that phrase. Pernicious is like this very nasty, tedious, bad, malicious, persistent type of energy, and then the mention of the engine just shows how it's like has a rhythm to it, a cycle to it. So a pernicious engine is one you definitely don't want behind you, by which their local governments were to be destroyed and their liberties exterminated. So liberties exterminated. Now, when the mention of liberties is brought up today, this will be a thorn for many because they'll realize how many liberties were taken away by the medical ethics boards, as the hideous monster whose devouring jaws would spare neither sex nor age, nor high nor low, nor sacred nor profane. And yet, strange as it may appear, after all this clamor, to those who may not have happened to contemplate them in the same light, it may be affirmed with perfect confidence that the Constitution operation... I see. It may be affirmed with perfect confidence that the constitutional operation of the intended government would be precisely the same if these clauses were entirely obliterated, as if they were repeated in every article. They are only declaratory of a truth which would have resulted by necessary and unavoidable implication. Unavoidable implication. From the very act of constituting a federal government, investing it with certain specific powers. Okay, so notice here. The federal government being vested with certain specified powers. Now I want you to look at the narrowness of that language. Certain, so it's not do as you want, you want to demand everybody wear a blue hat on Thursday, go right ahead. No, they got their framework specified. So the founders didn't just want the federal government to be willy-nilly a nanny state, trivializing and being petty in internal affairs of its citizens. This is so clear a proposition that moderation itself can scarcely listen to the railings which have been so copiously vented against this part of the plan, without emotions that disturb its equanimity. Ooh, I like that word. Equanimity. What is a power but the ability or faculty of doing a thing? Ooh. What is power but ability and faculty of doing something? So when you're talking about the power of the federal government, what are they able to do? And what's their faculty of doing it? What is the ability to do a thing but the power of employing the means necessary to its execution? Very good point. What is a legislative power but a power of making laws? What are the means to execute a legislative power but laws? What is the power of laying and collecting taxes but a legislative power, or a power of making laws to lay and collect taxes? What are the proper means of executing such a power but necessary and proper laws? Notice this language here. Necessary laws and proper laws. This is something to think about when you're looking at what laws need to be done away with and what new ones need to be given. What is necessary to bring law and order back to California? What is a proper law? This simple train of inquiry, your thread of reasoning, your train of reasoning, furnishes us at once with a test of true nature, the true nature of the clause complained of. It conducts us to this palpable truth, that a power to lay and collect taxes must be a power to pass all laws necessary and proper for the execution of that power. So here, you can notice a theme here. The power to lay and collect taxes. They need the necessary and proper means to collect and carry out that tax collection. Now you can see how much work he is doing to just get people comfortable with the small taxes they had at that level. You can notice further that they didn't want a communistic, socialistic rate of taxes, and how people were suspicious of what exactly the government would do with all this revenue. Fast forward to today, billions to Israel, billions to Ukraine. Look around some of these hoods, look around California's poverty, and ask yourself, okay, how is it possible to pay So many taxes that everything is so wrong. Somebody's pocketing something. There's too much bloated bureaucracy. We get less in our paychecks. We get to keep less of our money, but nothing is really getting improved. These politicians live off of our tax dollars, right? We pay them a salary to do their civic duties. And then they get perfect health insurance, fly on private jets, write laws that they know how to get around, write laws that they'll know the loopholes to, and really make it harder and harder for people to keep the pennies that they get. Making it easier for criminals to bribe and bait people into their groups. Really shows you that if you make doing what's halal hard, people will turn to crime, which is quite sad. So, you have people today arguing for more taxes, when we should be able to keep more of our money and do private charity. Something to think about there. And what does the unfortunate and calumniated provision in question do more than declare the same truth? To wit, that the national legislature, to whom the power of laying and collecting taxes had been previously given, might, in the execution of that power, pass all laws necessary and proper to carry it into effect. Pass all laws necessary and proper to carry it into effect. Now, necessary, proper. We need to notice this pattern he is doing of repetition here. I have applied these observations thus particularly to the power of taxation, because it is the immediate subject under the consideration, and because it is the most important of the authorities proposed to be conferred upon the Union. So notice here, he just told you it's a very important subject they were talking about, but it is the most important of authorities given to the federal government. The most important authority, the power of taxation. You're essentially taking people's money away. A lot of us Americans forget that. And while they're spending a lot of time talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, you often notice how there's a whole lot of things about where does your tax money go, who spends it, who gets it, are you doing checks on these programs, like what is all this huge, like how much money is taken in forms of taxes and where it all goes would be quite a great lesson for people to discover, because everybody wants to keep more of their money. But the same process will lead to the same result in relation to all other powers declared in the Constitution. It is expressly to execute these powers that the sweeping clause, as it has been affectedly called, authorizes the national legislature to pass all necessary and proper laws. If there be anything exceptionable, it must be sought, for in the specific powers upon which this general declaration is predicated, the declaration itself, though it may be chargeable with tautology or redundancy, it is at least perfectly harmless. But suspicion may ask, why then was it introduced? The answer is that could only have been done for greater caution, and to guard against all cavilling refinements in those who might hereafter feel a disposition to curtail and evade the legitimate authorities of the Union. Cavilling refinements. See what I'm saying? It's so fascinating how the quality of English grammar is really lost in these present generations. You know, it's so beautiful when you see someone who's able to speak their language with such nobleness. The convention probably foresaw that what it has been a principal aim of these papers to inculcate, that the danger which most threatens our political welfare is that the state governments will finally sap the foundations of the Union, and might therefore think it necessary, and so cardinal a point, to leave nothing to construction. Whatever may have been the inducement to it, the wisdom of the precaution is evident from the cry which has been raised against it, as that very cry betrays a disposition to question the great and essential truth which it is manifestly the object of that provision to declare. So, essentially, remember, it got until the first article authorizes the national legislature to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the powers by that Constitution vested in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. Alright, so notice, again, looking at how the Constitution puts a framework on the federal union, how you can carry things out, what power are they invested with, some grammar here: virulent, invective, petulant declamation, pernicious engines, talking about extermination of liberties, unavoidable implications, and the federal government has specific and certain powers. Equanimity, that you need to know that power is the ability or faculty to do a thing, right? So if you just look at this mindset and contrast it to today, that's one fun thing that you can do, because it can really just show you, okay, right winger, you say we should be more like this or more like that. Whose philosophy are you taking from? Whose political science agenda are you milking from? Right? Something to think about. Let me know what you learned, what you like, and if you'd like to support my work, you can do so via the blog, which is www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.